Hi everybody, this video is about how to put together one of our favorite new projects. This is an iris box, and in your box of making for January 2019, you've got this lovely package full of all of these little parts and pieces to put together. We're going to open this package up and stop for 1 second before we do that. Open the package up and show you all of the pieces and parts and what you'll need to do to decorate your iris box and get it ready to assemble. Now let's take a look at what's in this bag. There's lots of little pieces here, and I want to make sure you understand what all these little pieces are for and what you need to decorate as we look at our iris box. So in your bag, you're going to have 3 little bags. This one is the hardware. You can put it on the side. You're not going to need it at all until we're ready to assemble. And this one with these little rectangles and these little figure eights, you're not going to need it all until we assemble as well. So I'm going to put those on the side for now. Then let's look at the bigger pieces. In your set of bigger pieces, you should have an octagonal base. It'll say steamytech.com on it. And then this is the top of the box. So it's going to become the base of the iris as well. So you'll need to decorate both sides, at least of the bottom. You shouldn't be able to see the inside of this, but you probably want to sand it and decorate it as well. As always, make sure you sand and prepare your wood very carefully. These 2 pieces are going to get glued together like this and become the handles for your iris. So you'll see the outside edge of this piece as well as the handles. So make sure you sand these and decorate them as well. You can kind of see how that goes together here. Also make sure you sand the bottom, especially of this piece, so that you've got nice smooth action in your iris box when you put it together. Then you're going to have a ring here that this will get glued to. So you won't see the bottom of this ring except when you look in the side. So you might want to make it dark. Nothing should be rubbing against it, but again, you may want to sand it and make it dark just for consistencies. And then you've got this pretty Celtic knot on the top to decorate. So that's the pieces of the iris itself. And then we've got our box sides. Now they're going to come in 2 shapes. Let's see. This is the ones that I call innies because I've got the little ingos here, and you should have 4 of those if you look for them in your stack. Notice that you've got a captive screw nut hole in those. And then you're going to have 4 with outies. These 4 have the little bumps on the side so that they'll go together as well. So you should have 4 of 2 different kinds of pieces of wood, and these are going to pressure fit together like this to hold the box together. So you can decorate those sides. Now if you need to, again, to make your decorating complete and to get a sense of how this goes, you could lay all 8 of those out and see how they're going to fit as they go around in their shape around the octagon. Then you've got 1 more bag of parts here. Be really careful that you don't lose things in this bag because you're going to need all 24 pieces from this bag. And there are 2 different kinds of parts here. First, you're going to find 8 of these little pieces. These little pieces are going to go underneath. You shouldn't, again, be able to see them at all when they're assembled and finished. And then the pointy pieces, which you should have 16 of, when we do this assembly, will get glued on top of these pieces like this. So 1 layer of 8 of these, you want to make sure you decorate. Those are the ones you're going to be able to see all fancy and pretty looking. Make sure you get them all the same direction as well. It's sometimes not as easy to tell what the top and the bottom is, so you may decide you want to put them down, figure out which sides, or make sure they're all the same direction so that when you're decorating them, you've got a pretty pattern. You could even extend your Celtic knot pattern out onto these if you wanted to. They probably won't line up perfectly, unless you're really more skilled than I am. You'll notice when I put this one together, I didn't get all my pieces lined up perfectly. We'll see how I do on this one that we do together today. But that's going to be your top layer. The second layer is going to be underneath, again the same way. But you shouldn't be able to see any of these pieces at all, so you may just want to make them dark. Make sure, as always, you sand the wood, make sure everything is nice and smooth and will slide together nicely. This is all about the smoother it is, the better it is. So be a little careful with that. And now you can go away and decorate all your pieces, make yourself some amazingly beautiful art. And then we will come back and do the assembly. Now that you've got all of your pieces decorated, let's talk a little bit about how to assemble the box. And we're going to start with opening your hardware bag and taking a look at the pieces of hardware that's inside it. What you should find when you open the box is 24 little short 1/4-inch screws, 6, 8, 10, and 8 3/8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 24 small ones. And you should have 8 slightly longer ones and 8 nuts. So my recommendation for assembling this, there are a lot of choices. You could start with assembling the top surface first. You can start with assembling the box bottom first. I think assembling the box itself first is the easiest way to go. And I am sure we will run into the challenge with doing that when I put it together. But I'm going to start this project with putting the box bottom together first. So I've got my glue out here. Now, this isn't a brand new bottle, but it should be fine. Yep. And we're going to put our 3/8-inch screws in and put this box together all the way around like we've done many other boxes in the past. But if you haven't got one of our boxes yet, these are very tight and very pressure fitted, so it's going to take you a little bit of oomph to get them in. You probably want, as you lay each layer in, to put a dot of glue on it as well, just to make sure it stays together nice. So I'm going to put a dot of glue here. I'm going to slide this piece in. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press down this direction to make sure it's nice and tight in both directions. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one little dot of glue and I'm going to put a dot of glue on my screw. I'm going to slide a nut into this hole here. And then I'm going to put this screw up through this nut and fasten these two pieces together. That just gives us one more layer of security and holding our box together. These are tight enough pieces, you shouldn't have a problem with that, but just to make life easy and complete, we'll do that. Now I'm ready for an outie piece. Remember, I wanted a piece that matched here. So I can put that in here like this. And I'm just going to push down to get that to go together. Push in nicely on the sides to make sure I'm all the way locked together. And my pieces have lined up nicely. One more little bit of pressure. There we go. That's all nice and perfectly fitted, except I am upside down. So we'll pop that back out. You got to make sure you get your holes on the bottom, and we'll try that one more time. Your little keyholes for your screws have to match, and since the pieces are uniform, you're going to do that at least once putting this together. So I'm very glad I've done it for you first. So let's try that again. Slide it in, push that down. That all fits together very nicely and tight. Put a little drop of glue on a screw. Now I know you all laughed at me when I did that, but just because I was trying to make sure you knew what not to do. So now put that screw in. And we'll continue around, and hopefully I can get these all the right direction this time. Make sure you put the keyhole down. Press those all together nicely. That's nice and tightly fit. And I know this is a little boring, but getting to the putting the iris together will be really fun. So we'll get the boring part out of the way first. And then we'll spend some time talking about how to get this iris together and iris in, right? This isn't quite as smooth as I want it to be. One more little punch there. Get that in. This one's an outie, and the keyhole's at the bottom. Pushing that in. Okay, the more practice you have, the better you'll get at it. Now you'll notice that we don't have nuts for all those other screws. All those other screws are going to be really important for providing pivot points for the iris box itself. Halfway there. Pushes into place. I'm sitting here on a rainy afternoon in Santa Clara. So, rainy days, snowy days, those are the perfect times to do these boxes. Now putting the iris together really sanding and smooth really matters. So I'm going to trust that all of you followed my instructions, and before you decorated on your wood, you sanded the iris pieces. That's the most important part, to get those nice and smooth into place. Sometimes makes horrible noises, doesn't it? go. Putting the last one in is the trickiest because you're going to have to pull out a little bit on the other two as well to make sure that everything meshes perfectly. And you can always make sure that you practiced and tested it before you put glue on things, especially with this stuff that's pressure fit. That's perfectly fine. It'll stay together even without the glue on it. But the glue makes it all go over so much better. And we're ready for the last piece. Let's make sure I get this one in with the keyhole down. Get my other two pieces to line up to it properly. There we go. And now I can put my last screw in. A little bit of drop of glue on that screw. Put the nut in the holder. And put the piece in. And while we're here working on our box, we might as well finish up the bottom of this box by putting our feet on it. We've given you 4 circles on the bottom of the box. I always put a little bit of glue on. They're self-stick feet, but they don't stick as well as I would like and stay anywhere. But if you take a little bit of super glue and put that super glue on the dots first and then stick your feet to it, they should stay nice and firm. And that way you won't have things scratching your tabletops or anything else. I expect this box is going to be one you're really proud of and you want to leave out for people to play with. All right, now that you've got your box assembled, we're ready to work on the iris. I think the best step next is actually to work on putting the top on the iris box itself. But in order to do that, we have to do one thing first. We're going to take 8 screws and put them up into the box itself. So the best way to do that, you're actually going to have to use your screwdriver to do this, and we're going to screw them all the way in, is to start a screw. Get a little drop of glue on the threads once you've got it started, and then push it and then screw it up the rest of the way through so that you don't end up with a ton of glue on the outside getting in your way. The other way to do it would be to put your drop of glue on the wood before you start them, but if you do that, then you're going to end up with glue all over all your screw threads, and you probably don't want to do that. So I'm going to take my next 7 screws, and we're going to just turn them one turn here to get them started. Got them all started now, so I'm going to go through and do a couple of a time. Put a little drop of glue on those threads right at the end. The right answer is to do one at a time. And then go ahead and tighten that up. The holes are such that they're going to be self-starting, and hold, but if you tighten it too tight, you're never actually going to get it tight. It's just very soft wood, and the screws will obviously go through it. But what we're accomplishing by doing this is keeping our screw threads on the top free of glue, but making sure that these screws themselves stay glued into place. And I'm going to do the same thing on this last set of 4. drop of glue, a drop of glue. And we want to make sure they get glued into place in the lid so that they don't fall out on you. Letting these fall out would be a bit of a problem. Okay, and I'm going to wipe all of that off. Make sure I didn't end up with any glue sticking through. And you want to make sure all of these are all the way up though, because you need that 1/4 inch so that you can put something over the top. If they're loose, you're not going to be all the way tight and you're not going to have as much pivot. And you want all the pivot you can get here. Now, at this point, I'm going to put the lid on. You have a choice. You don't have to if you don't want to. It may be easier to assemble not in the box. If you assemble it not in the box, you don't have quite as much leeway to play with when you're trying to get this lid on. This is a pressure fit lid, so it should go on fine. If you want to glue it on, you can. I like not gluing it in. It's still really tight. It's going to be really fine for you either way. But if you glue it, then you don't have any way to take it apart if you have a real problem and you need to get it apart. So you just squeeze down gently all the way around. If you ran into a side that was pushed in too far, you could push your fingers in and hold it and push against the walls to be able to give yourself some leverage to get it out. Once it's in, if you need to, you can also go press down all the way around and make sure it stays nice and flat. And you've got your box built. So now we're ready to do our next bit of assembly. And I'm going to take my next bag, the one we left on the side, out and show you what's in it. It has 16 very little pieces in it. 8 of them look like these little building blocks, and 8 of them I'm going to call figure 8s. So first, let's make sure I've got 8 of both of those, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 8 of these. The 8 that look like figure 8s, we need to put screws in. So I'm going to do the same thing here we just did with my lid, which is I'm going to start these screws, both go in the same directions. I'm going to put a little drop of glue on both of them. I'm sorry, guys, you're going to get glue on your fingers. But as we always say at Steamy Tech, if you have not got glue on your fingers, you're not doing it right. And then I'm going to tighten those in so that we're sure those screws stay nice and glued into those pieces. And I'm going to use a paper towel and wipe off the excess glue so it doesn't get all over everything. These are going to be completely hidden. There's no reason to worry about needing to decorate them or do anything else. Just start your 2 screws. Put your drops of glue on them. That might be a little too much. That definitely is going to get glue all over my fingers. Again, I'm trying to avoid getting glue on the part of the threads that needs to come out and come through so we don't end up with pieces that won't pivot properly. And I know these are teeny tiny pieces. Try to avoid gluing your fingers together. If you do, you can peel them apart. You can use fingernail polish remover if you have some, or mom or wife has some. Or you can just kind of peel your fingers apart if it happens. But if you're careful, you won't. You can do it one at a time. So you're not dealing with quite as much glue. I tend to be impatient and do things the wrong way, which gets me covered in glue much more quickly. If you haven't figured it out yet, you can decide what you're going to do with your box. Hopefully you have by now. Okay, that's 3. We got to keep going here. And this is going to use the rest of your 24 screws up, and so the rest of it is just gluing some layers together and putting the pieces together properly. And as with the other ones, make sure you get these tightened down all the way so that you don't, and so that they're as flat as you can get them. If they're too tall, they're going to be a bit of a problem. So I'll be a little careful on that subject. Okay. Halfway done. And these, just like the other ones, if you really wanted to, you could test without putting the glue in them. But we know we're going to have to do this, so there's no harm really in gluing them first before you test and put it all together. Okay, we're getting closer here now. 5 down, 3 to go. Trust you're enjoying your box and staying nice and warm this winter. Four more screws. I don't see any glue dribbling out. That's always a good sign. Nobody's going to see the top of these, so don't freak out if they don't look perfect, but flat is key. And 2 more. All right, so I've got my 8 little pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go, 8. And now the next step is actually to start to do this iris assembly. Now, you'll notice we're going to take these little rectangular pieces and we're going to put them in these holes. And this is really a tight press fit. I made them this way on purpose to make sure that they really didn't come out on you. So once you get them started, you may decide you want to use your hammer to hammer them in. If you want to glue them in, you can. They're tight enough if you can get them all the way in. They're not likely to come out. Or you can use a little pair of pliers and squeeze a little bit on the wood. I wanted them to be nice and tight. So you'll see pulling that out is pretty hard, but I've got it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a drop of glue right here. And then put it in the rest of the way. That means I end up with a little drop of glue across the inside that I can wipe up, but I'm sure it's going to stay in place. So we're going to go all the way around the box and put these pieces into place. And I'm going to go ahead and use my drops of glue on them as I go around and do that. If your hands aren't strong enough to do this, find somebody with hands a little stronger than you have. But we want to get them all in and nice and flat. Because this is what's going to give us the shape to our iris so that our wheels spin around. And I'm just gently tapping those into place so it all stays down and stays nice and flat as they go. And it's bound that some of them are going to be a little harder than others. Oops, this one's just going to give me trouble, I can tell. There we go, that's in now. Getting them in and all the way flat in is the important part here, because we're going to put a ring on top of those in a few minutes, and that has to go flat as well. I'm also going to use this to get my little tighter on while I am here and pounding. The other option for your glue, it's not nearly as pretty, is just to put a little dot of glue across the hole. If you do that, then it kind of will go all the way in when you put your pieces in. And in that case, you definitely want to wipe it off so that you don't end up with bumps of glue someplace. There we go. Now that I've got glue all over my fingers. This one really doesn't want to go in. There we go. Flip it around this way and it'll go. It's all about getting it in all the way. And again, you're not going to see these pieces, so don't panic. almost in. There we go. That one's in for me now. And let's watch this last guy be stubborn. Just when nope, he went in perfectly. See, it's all about how swollen the wood is and how it's feeling at the moment. You have to talk nicely to your wood if you want it to behave. Now, we're ready to build the heart of our iris. So what we're going to do is first notice you can drop these two pieces over and see how smoothly they spin. We're going to want to glue those two layers together. So leave the bottom one on. That's the one that has the little holes in it. And put your bead of glue on the two handles. And then all the way around the outside of the circle. And now we're going to glue this down. Make sure it gets nice and glued. Pressure is what makes super glue stick and be so strong. So a little pressure goes a long way. And now we can spin that back and forth. And we've got a great handle, and that's all lined up. Make sure you can spin that nicely. And now we're ready to take our 8 little iris pieces. That's these ones that are the really funky shape. I don't even know how to describe them. And we're going to put them like so. So these inner circle, we're going to form a nice smooth inner circle with these. Just by setting them at an angle around the box. And you want to make sure they all go the same direction. That's why we're doing this way, is because it will be very obvious to you very quickly if you've got one of them backwards or upside down. Now, depending on which side you decorated on these, assuming you decorated the finished side, then that's the direction they'll want to go. If for some reason you decorated the back side on all of those, then you may have a little bit of a problem. But as long as you decorated the front side, we're going to start to put this together like that. So once I've got my 8 pieces here, then I'm going to take my 8 little figure 8s with my nuts in them and my screws in them, not nuts, screws. And each of those pieces is going to drop nicely into a hole so that I can then slide these back and forth. So I'm going to put it in the hole in my funky piece and in the hole in my ring. And you can see how that'll go together. And you want to get all 8 of these in. If you run into one that doesn't want to fit, just press down on it hard. You should still have enough pivot. And this is a little bit one of the tricky parts of this box. So be patient with yourself. Make sure it all fits in nice and tight, goes all the way down. As long as you didn't get any glue sticking out, they should pop in and be just the right tension to stay nice and tight and acting as pivot points for you. I think I did that successfully on this one. And it always gets me in trouble when I get to the last one. So you want to make sure that point is on and these two are in. And we're ready for the last one, which is always the hardest for me. And now you'll notice that you should, whoops, okay, if you have kept your piece flat. I lost that one, so we'll pop it loose. Slide it back to where it belongs. We gotta get a way to get that held down, don't we? Just to make sure pieces quit popping apart. So let's first validate that it works. And once we're sure all of our pieces are spinning nicely and the irises are going in and out and in, then we're gonna take this piece that goes on the top. And we're gonna do the same thing with it that we did with putting those pieces on the bottom. The good news is, because it's going in this way, I think you've got a little better leverage on it because we've got hold of the whole ring. Now, if you run into one that doesn't fit, you can use a little bit of a screwdriver to push it in or use your finger to adjust it a little bit. But we're adjusting the ring to pop down on top of all 8 of these little pins. And just like I didn't glue the lid on, I'm not gluing this pivot ring on because then we can take it apart if we need to. And if it's all the way down, you should be able to nice and easily still spin your iris open and close, and it's not going to come apart. Now the front rings can still come off. Once we've assembled it, we'll put the top ring on, and that'll prevent these screws from coming loose. But first, let's make sure this is all still nice and smooth. As long as those screws that are against the back were nice and tight, you should have a nice, easy spinning of your box. And that's our first important step. If it's a problem, you can pry up a little bit on the ring of the box and see if you can figure out which screw isn't tight. Or which screw isn't seated. But as long as it's seated, you should be able to have a pretty smooth, spinny back and forth here. So now we're ready to build the iris. And this is the part for me that's the hardest. Because we've got to make sure these all get perfectly aligned. And you'll notice that we can do that by aligning those 2 pieces on the odd-shaped piece. And that's going to make our petals line up nice and evenly. But never fear, if they're not aligned perfectly when you glue them down, you've got a little bit of room to play with as you glue them in. But those corner spots right there and right there are really your guiding marks. So we're going to put a little bit of glue right in the middle of this piece, like that. And I am going to do my best to get that aligned perfectly in that, on that spot. And push down and give it a second or two because this is super glue again. And I should still be able to pivot nice and easily back over that other piece. Since I'm at the exact same height. And then I'm going to continue my way around the box. One of the reasons for not putting the box on first is because then when you drop pieces in it, you can get to them. Hey! And sometimes super glue just doesn't want to stick, and then you got to try it again and again. So I'm going to put this super glue piece back on and wait a few more seconds. Waiting ever so patiently for this to finish drying. Put some glue on this next piece, although a little goes a long way, and I think I got way too much on it. I'm going to take a little bit off. Line this next one up. The other option you have is gluing the 2 layers together before you do this and doing this with all of the 2 layers in place. That works well as well, maybe better, but if you're skilled enough, you'll be able to do it this way just fine. So I'm still spinning nicely those 2 mated perfectly. I think I'm actually in really good shape to get this lined up and closing nicely. This piece of the project is all about patience and being a little careful putting it together. Sometimes we do a project that's all about just big and tough and strong, but this part of the project is precision. And again, wait ever so patiently to make sure it all dries and isn't going to slide on you like that one's trying to. Boy, this doesn't want to stay glued today. While that one's drying, I'll put a little glue on this next one. And we'll see how well I do. Trying not to drop them in the hole. Let's see, am I still opening and closing okay? I am. And I'm actually successfully lining up right at the corners on my brackets too. So you're just going to want to continue this process all the way around, getting your boxes nice and neat and perfectly closing as you can. That one slid some on me. I think it's still loose. Yep, glue's still loose on that. Try that one more time. Put a little more glue on there. Waiting patiently. And while I'm waiting for that one, I'm going to put a little glue on this one again. Although that got me in trouble the last time. Put a little glue here. Glue these together like so. Six petals. Seven petals. Getting very close to done now. One more petal on the bottom layer. And I'm just going to set that in to make sure it all stays nice and tight. And I'm going to sit here and hold this for 10 or 15 seconds to make sure that I really don't have a petal fall off in the process. That's still a little loose. That one's good. That one's good. This last one's trying to be stubborn. And you now have an iris box. So the last thing we want to do then, 2 more steps. We need to put the top level petals on. And again, this is about precision and fanaticism. I'm sorry. This is the part for those of you who are truly all about being really uber careful. You'll enjoy this. For those of us who are not ever truly uber careful, this will be annoying. It's all about getting them lined up. So I'm just going to go through and glue and line them up. Now, because I got the glue over the edge, I want to make sure I keep it a little loose and don't have them gluing themselves together. And I'm just going to put glue all the way around and then come back and put my petals on. The right answer, as always, is to do this one at a time, but I am not nearly that patient today, so I'm going to do it by putting all my glue on first, and then I'm going to come back around and add my petal layers next. Being very, very careful to get them all lined up. All the way around on my box. It's all about lining them up. Now, the last thing you need to do then is make sure you're still opening and closing nicely, and you should be with it just tucking in under that ring there. And we're not having any trouble getting under the ring, so that's a good thing. We're opening all the way up still. Everything's perfect. We've got a beautiful box. Now, the last piece. One more thing we need to do, which is make sure that these pieces don't come loose. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to put a ring of glue here on this face and glue our top ring on. Now, one more thing, we didn't glue down this pressure fit ring. At this point, if you want to glue that down, you can just make sure you put a little bit of glue in each of those holes all the way around. And as you lay your top ring on, that will seal that whole set together. So nothing can move on you or come apart on you. And you glue that lovely Celtic knot on top, which I'm sure you have decorated in a fun and amazing way. And I really want to see what your boxes all look like. And then your iris opens and closes with that knot perfectly. And you've got a beautiful iris box to store things in or to use for a gift box. And again, if you need to take it apart to do more work on the inside of it, you can pop the lid off of it ever so carefully as a single unit if you didn't glue it down. And there's your iris box. Thanks so much.